Hello and welcome. This is Losthalia, and I've got another raid guide. This time, we'll be taking a look at Mu Raid Normal. As usual, I will cover just enough information to clear the raid. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Mu is a 12-man raid with 3 phases, raid buffs, player buffs, and 11 bosses. To beat the raid, your team must clear all 3 phases before time runs out. Phase 1 starts with a 15-minute timer, and you are awarded an additional 10 minutes after clearing a phase. When the raid first begins, the raid leader must select an active and a passive raid buff. Both are available for all 3 phases of the raid, though the active raid buff has a limited number of uses. The available buffs change week to week. Take either Burning Tenacity or Skill Acceleration for the active buff. I recommend Loop of Circulation and Survival Strategy for the passive buff, as they increase the raid's damage output. Keep in mind, the raid timer has already started, so pick quickly. First up, first phase. All of the Osrahan bosses make a return, and all of them have to die. Red and yellow party focus on clearing weather patterns and killing bosses. Green party manages the boss's berserk meters and stops bosses from reviving. All of the boss rooms are connected via the Dream Passage. The party leader can use the Dream Passage to leave a boss room and move to a different one. This can be done even when a boss is still alive, provided other conditions are met. To access the Dream Passage, there can be no other party in the passage, and you must power up Urgon's Jade at least once after entering a boss room. Urgon's Jade is the little P symbol on your buff bar and on every boss's health bar. When a party damages a boss past a P threshold, their Jade is powered up. The P powers are similar to those from Osrahan and can be used with Special Dungeon Key 1, which is default tab. In Phase 1, the effect you get is based on the boss you are fighting. You can see what P power, if any, people have on the raid HUD. While you have P power, you get a general damage increase with a further damage increase against a specific boss based on the element the Jade is empowered with. Lastly, the P power can be donated in the Dream Passage to reduce the berserk meter of the boss 1 position clockwise from the power's source. Here we use the Ice P power to reduce Brim's berserk meter. When defeated, the bosses will resurrect after a set amount of time. This is easily prevented by knocking their meager health bars back down to 0. The basic cycle of Phase 1 is clearing weather patterns to get damage phases, with continued use of P power to prevent any boss from berserking. To this end, red should catch first weather and yellow should catch second weather. With that in mind, the rampaging boss creates 3 different scenarios important for this guide. Scenario 1. The first 2 weather patterns have no overlap with the rampaging boss. This is the easiest, as red and yellow can focus on their weather patterns, while green gathers P power to keep the rampaging boss's berserk meter low. Scenario 2. The second weather pattern overlaps with the rampaging boss. Green will go to the rampaging boss to deal as much damage as they can. Yellow will need to get P power and donate it before the second weather pattern can happen, and be mindful of the rampaging berserk meter. Scenario 3. The first weather pattern overlaps with the rampaging boss. Again, green will go to the rampaging boss to deal as much damage as they can. Red will need to donate P power as soon as their damage phase ends. In all 3 scenarios, green should 3A on entry, yellow should 1A on entry, and red should hold awakening until after their weather pattern. Now you know what's going on in Phase 1, let's talk about the bosses. Each boss has a new pattern, unique to Mu Raid, and this pattern will always be chosen for that boss's first weather pattern. At the top of the map is Brim. Outside of his new pattern, it's more of the same from Osrahan. Dodge tornadoes, remember to breathe, etc. Brim's new pattern is wildly different. He turns the whole party into tiny soldiers who must use his weapons to defeat him. There are a couple of different soldiers, but they can all pick up weapons and throw them with the first skill button, and they can dodge Brim's attacks with the third skill button. The wizard has an additional button that can remove the stun effect from being hit by Brim. Hitting Brim with weapons decreases the corrupted mist rampage counter. The spear has a sweet spot during the QTE for further reduction of the counter. When the counter hits 0, the damage phase begins. After pushing past a full P threshold, the damage to the boss is now Overflow Damage, indicated by the blue on the boss's HP bar. A portion of the Overflow Damage will be dealt to the adjacent bosses if they're still alive. Maximizing overflow damage is critical to getting through Phase 1 fast. And remember, overflow damage is only available after a successful weather pattern completion. Let's finish Brim off here and move along clockwise. Next up is Semiani. Like in Osrahan, you need to avoid attacks in order to prevent your flame gauge from fully filling and SOSing you. When someone inevitably gets SOS'd, make sure to get them out quickly by standing on them. Semiani's new weather pattern, Explosive Assault, requires the party to grab flame orbs until the counter hits 0. However, Semiani will also brand a party member during this pattern, indicated by the paw mark. The brand steadily increases the flame gauge for whomever is in possession of it. Walk into someone else to pass them the brand. Pass the brand as best as you can and free anyone who gets SOS, and you'll be fine. We had to step out here to keep Cladis from having a pop-off. One way or another, that'll put Semiani down. And, speaking of Cladis, he's up next. Cladis is very similar to his showing in Osrahan. It's very important that you keep your life gauge high before the weather pattern starts. Dodge attacks, stay in the life zones, the usual. To clear Cladis' weather pattern, you need to combine a life and a death orb on top of him while standing in one of the life zones. Do this by having one player grab a life orb and a second player grab a death orb. Both players need to run into each other on top of Cladis. Doing this will create a protective droplet. Walking into an orb opposite of the one you are carrying will destroy both it and the one you are carrying. Similarly, Cladis' attacks will destroy any orbs they hit, both on the ground and being carried. At the end, grab a protective droplet to immune Cladis' attack. If you don't create enough droplets, you can iframe the attack, and as long as one person gets a droplet, you'll get a damage phase. All that's left is to pay Cladis back for all of his shenanigans. Then, it's time to keep moving clockwise to our next boss. Our second to last boss here in Phase 1 is Diane. Again, very similar to her Osrahan boss fight outside of her new weather pattern. Her weather pattern, Sad Friends Assemble, is quite simple. Jump on the little red guys to get a lightning bolt. When you are full on lightning bolts, touch Diane to reduce her counter by the number of lightning bolts you had. If you grab too many lightning bolts, you lose them all and create a thunder cloud that will attack you. Also remember to jump the lightning on the ground that Diane sends out. When the counter hits 0, you have your damage phase, so send it. Our damage was a bit low here, so we had to stay in for a little bit after the weather pattern to take her out. There's one more boss after Diane. Moving along. Forz is last here, but certainly not least. He's back up to his old tricks, however he does have a modification to his Osrahan pattern. But more on that later. His new pattern is simple. He puts either a 19, 21, or 23 in the center of the room. Your party needs to add up to this number. 3 players go into his mini dimensions and drop numbers into cubes, while 1 player stays outside to counter hit Forz. The numbers in the dimensions don't repeat, so put 1 of each number, except for number 2, into a cube. If Forz's number is 19, this will solve the pattern. For 21 and 23, simply add 1 or 2 number 2s to solve the pattern. Back to Forz's modified Osrahan pattern. In addition to the 3-door and 5-door, there is now a chance for him to do a 1-door. I've seen him do this maybe twice since the raid came out, and I couldn't readily find my footage of it. If you really want to look it up, some of the text guides reference it. However, it is very much not needed to clear, as Forz will only ever be able to do this on his second weather pattern, and even then it's not guaranteed. That concludes Phase 1. On to Phase 2. Phase 2 begins with another buff selection, this time for individual parties. The raid timer is still counting down during this, so this is not a break. These buffs are the P powers from Phase 1, however, 3 of them will be cursed. The curse has downsides for the party, but generally makes the buff stronger. Curse or no, we're picking Fire for red, Wind for yellow, and Rain for green. Phase 2 ends when we kill Lopes. Parties will take turns fighting Lopes, one at a time. When they are not fighting Lopes, parties need to deal with the gates of Sun and Moon. Gates spawn at set intervals and move until they crash in the middle. Gate parties need to kill a boss in a gate to flip it to the other type to create harmony. That means one gate is Moon and the other gate is Sun. Gates that have power still can be used to stack debuffs on their matching boss or to prepare debuffs for Lopes. The gates do not have to be paired or on the same line to debuff their matching boss. Send red into Lopes. Either yellow or green, whoever has Awakening, goes to the first boss gate. The other party of yellow or green goes to the paired gate to debuff the boss. The goal is to harmonize the gates while stacking as many debuffs on Lopes as possible. If gates out of harmony, the same type, crash, Lopes loses any debuffs on him, and the party fighting Lopes will take a massive hit and will be forced out much sooner. If you're fighting a boss on line 1 or a line 2 that's about to be line 1, it is advisable to open with an Awakening, as you'll have about a minute and a half to kill the boss. With that in mind, let's talk about the gate bosses. Savelli is the boss of the Moon Gate. He jumps around a lot and has two main patterns. The first is Moon and Sun tiles. Stand on the Sun tiles to get Sun energy, and walk over the Moon tiles to spend Sun energy to flip them from Moon to Sun. If the majority of the tiles are Sun, when the pattern ends, you get a damage phase. Getting hit reduces your Sun energy, but clearing out Savelli's nail zones gives you back extra Sun energy. As long as everyone is helping, you'll have no problems with this one. Savelli's second pattern is Invisible Abyss. Stand on the green tile to reveal yellow tiles. When a player is on each yellow tile, the corresponding green tile will be cleared. Every set of green tiles cleared removes one charge from Savelli's Invisible Abyss. Make sure to stand on a green tile as the Icy Death bar reaches full, as Savelli will deal heavy damage to anyone not on a green tile when this bar fills. Clear them all, get the damage phase, and clear out Savelli. Rosalind is the boss of the Sun Gate, and like Savelli, she has two main patterns. The first is Sun and Moon tiles. This time, you need to stand on the Moon tiles to get Moon energy, and run over the Sun tiles to spend Moon energy to flip them from Sun to Moon. If the majority of the tiles are Moon when the pattern ends, you get a damage phase. Getting hit reduces your Moon energy, but catching meteors gives you back extra Moon energy. Do not let the meteors crash. Some variants are single player to catch, some require 2 players to catch. Stand on the marked tile to catch the meteors. Rosalind's second pattern is the Sun is Falling. 3 players will periodically have Sun tiles spawn at their feet, indicated by the green highlights. 1 player will have a darkness aura that allows them to deactivate Sun tiles by walking over them. You succeed by hanging in there until the bar empties. If you overlap any Sun tiles, indicated by the red highlights, you boom the pattern. If a meteor falls without being caught, you boom the pattern. And Rosalind's tile in the center does count as a Sun tile. Of the 4 patterns, this one is the easiest to fail because it only takes one person messing up one thing and the whole pattern booms. Finish off the gate bosses and we're on to Lopes himself. Lopes is the guy you have to kill to get to the next phase, so let's take a crack at him. Phase 1, Lopes is all about purple and gray. P1 and P3 are purple, P2 and P4 are gray. Purple grabs purple things, gray grabs gray things. If you're gray and you stand in a purple zone, you'll take damage. If you're purple and you stand in a gray zone, you'll take damage. Lopes has 2 different patterns that he will alternate between. First, we'll look at area restriction. If the outer ring reaches the inner ring before the timer ends, you boom the pattern. You must stay inside the outer ring. While players are beyond the outer ring, it will rapidly shrink towards the inner ring. Grab shards of your color to expand the ring, and catch orbs of your color to prevent an explosion from knocking people out of the ring. You can jump to catch the orbs early. If you walk on a shard that is not your color, you will destroy the shard. Periodically, Lopes will cast a magic circle activation. The red circle will expand to cover the whole of the ring. You must get out of the ring to avoid the explosion, and then get back in as quickly as possible so the ring does not shrink too much. You can iframe the explosion, and you can backstep cancel if you get hit by it. There are 2 awakening timings possible for this fight. Either 1A on entry, and then 3A after the second pattern clears, or hold awakening until after the first pattern clears, and then 3A. The first is certain to deal more damage, however the second is safer if you're not confident that gates will not crash, or if you can do both patterns. The other pattern that Lopes can do is Trial of Harmony. Color partners will be paired into their own dimensions, purple and purple, gray and gray. Between the 2 groups, you must succeed 6 times at equalizing the amount of gray and purple lanterns. Every set starts with a targeted AoE that you can use to change the lantern colors. After that, you will have a small window in which you can destroy lanterns with X-String. Try to stick near your partner so you're both on screen and on the same page. Having voice chat helps immensely here, but it's not strictly required. Either designate ahead of time someone to break lanterns or walk together to break the lanterns together. Between the 2 groups, you only have enough time to make 2 mistakes total. That means one team can only succeed 5 times when 6 is needed, so everyone must be able to do this. After 2 patterns and 2 damage phases, you're just about out of time in Lopes, so another party will have to replace you. One last general thing to keep in mind about Phase 1 Lopes is consolidation. A player who picks up 3 colored balls in quick succession will become consolidated. Some of Lopes' attacks in between patterns require this. To free someone from being consolidated, simply run into them. At 40% HP, Lopes is done playing around and it's time for Phase 2. No more purple and gray, just green. Lots and lots of green. The green zones on the floor explode when Lopes casts Area Activation. Certain attacks he does will consolidate players. You still get them out the same as before by running into them. Some of Lopes' attacks will leave green and black blobs on the ground. Pick them up by running over them to fill your Remnants of Disharmony gauge. When the gauge reaches 100%, a green sphere will spawn. You can X-string the sphere to pick it up and become invulnerable for a short amount of time and to reset some of your skills. During a pattern, for every unique player death, you lose a black mark. The more marks you have, the more damage you'll deal to Lopes during the damage phase. At the end of every pattern, you must have an invuln shield or some really good iframes, as Lopes will always end with a screen-wide kill attack. Standing on the large seals on the ground will consolidate you, so continue to avoid those. Lopes can and will summon lanterns that first have a red cast bar, followed by a green cast bar. You must hit the lanterns during the green cast bar with any attack, including skills, to destroy them. If the green cast bar finishes, the lantern will explode, hitting everyone in the room. Continue to dodge Lopes' attacks while picking up the blobs. For this pattern, Lopes will summon 2 large consolidation orbs. They each need to be run into multiple times to remove them. And then don't forget to grab an invuln shield before the pattern ends. It's important to understand when you should be picking up invuln shields, as they are required to avoid many of Lopes' attacks and to do the patterns without being overwhelmed. As long as the parties outside prevent any same gate crashes, the debuffs on Lopes will continue to stack to an absurdly high degree to where you can wear him down even if you're having a hard time in Phase 2. With Lopes out of the picture, we're on to the last stretch, Phase 3. Again, Phase 3 begins with a buff selection while the clock is running. If you're new to Moo Raid, you should be taking Song of Miracles every time. The extra 10 minutes is invaluable if your raid isn't comfortable with every pattern. If you're feeling rather confident, take the Song of Courage for the bonus damage. Every Phase 3 begins with a random 5 debuffs applied to your raid. These debuffs are a main mechanic in this phase. Clearing patterns removes debuffs, and failing patterns adds debuffs. If you hit 10 debuffs, 5 of them will be removed and the raid timer will decrease. Retreating back to town will also add a debuff. Send red into Moo, yellow to the right terminus, and green to the left. Weather patterns make a return as well. When the weather hits, the Terminus Bosses will do a unique pattern based on the weather. Clearing a weather pattern removes debuffs and grants us a much needed damage phase on the Terminus Bosses. Killing both Terminus bosses at the same time creates a Sirocco-like damage opportunity for the whole raid to attack Mu, as well as removing one of Mu's HP locks. It will also rotate Mu clockwise so that another party is facing her. More on Mu later. Right now we've got to talk about Terminuses. There are 2 Terminus bosses, and they are functionally identical until Mu hits phase 2. And even then, the only difference is that one will stun you when you get hit, and the other will halo you when you get hit. In between weather patterns, the Terminus bosses have a few different attacks that mostly consist of dodging AoEs. One of the unique attacks is Shackles of Memory. Simply box the Terminus within the chains to get a small damage phase. The first weather we'll tackle is water. It's fairly simple. A circle will spawn in one of the corners of the room. Everyone has to run to it to catch the bubble. Each time you catch the bubble, one player will be absorbed into the bubble until you clear the pattern. While you run between bubbles, a damaging rain will trail behind you, so move fast and move together. Clearing the weather removes a debuff and nets a solid damage phase. Get Terminus down to about 10% health before slowing damage. From there, you can carefully whittle them down to a couple of percent. Do not kill Terminus until the raid leader gives you the go-ahead. Here, we're waiting for Red Party's Awakening to be ready. They used Awakening on entry or in the first move pattern that they cleared. We want to sync all 3 parties' Awakenings for the Terminus kill so that we get as much damage on Mu as possible. The next weather pattern that blows in is Wind. To clear the pattern, destroy all of the tornadoes by jumping into them. Start in the top left and work your way counterclockwise as a party to destroy the 2-person tornadoes, and then go for the 1-person tornadoes on the edges of the room. The call to kill Terminus comes in, and we start the joint damage phase on Mu. The raid leader should use the raid-wide buff when they call for the Terminus kill. Make sure to use your P power here to maximum effect. When the phase is done, Mu cycles, so now yellow is facing her, while green and red fight Terminus. Get some damage on Terminus with the remaining awakening time. Distorted Sanctuary is an easy one. Just stand on one of the sigils, you'll be trapped in a protected bubble, and avoid the damage when the cast bar fills. 1 person per sigil. Skipping ahead to the fire weather pattern, you need to clear 3 sets of sigils. In each set, there are bat sigils and flame sigils. Clear the bat sigils, then stand on the flame sigils until they clear. The sigil spawns are always the same. Set 1, top left counterclockwise, end middle. Set 2, top bottom split. Set 3, middle split. Next for weather is ice. Catch snowballs as a team while avoiding the hail falling on you. If you catch enough snowballs, you clear the pattern. Move as a group and stay between Terminus's legs. Don't fall too far back or go too far forward. Moving as a group idiot-proofs most of these weather patterns, especially when Mu is in her second phase. Another normal attack, Shaking Fog. Touch the sigils, jump the shockwaves when he charges, and chain him to the crystals when he jumps back to the center. And that'll roll us right into lightning weather pattern. If you're purple, touch the boss. When anyone touches the boss, everyone needs to jump the shockwave. Party order is preferred, but unnecessary. If the pattern goes on long enough, you may have to clear some sigils as a party. Do not run into the boss constantly, as this will trigger constant shockwaves for everyone to have to jump over. Here are some more normal Terminus attacks, mostly just clearing sigils. Work as a team and you'll have no problems. Don't let Terminus jump on the crystal you summon. The normal attacks are kind of a joke and are interrupted by weather patterns. That's all for Terminus. On to the Lady of the Hour herself, Mu. Mu has a lot of normal attacks that are different forms of dodge the AoEs, so I might not cover them all. Don't stand in the obvious attacks she does. Stuff can really hurt in this fight. Memory Flower is a normal attack where you create the AoEs by running around. Stay still until the cast bar is nearly full, then move out. Triangle Geometry Bullet Hell is exactly that. Protect your triangle and get out of the bullet hell to pass the pattern. If anyone escapes, you all succeed. You need to use the point where the spirals disappear as a way to dodge as well. This is also a desync pattern, so if someone in your party gets desynced when this happens, it's probably not their fault. It just happens on this pattern sometimes. Some more normal attacks here. These are dodge the AoEs, move to complete the circles around the arrow to destroy it. If you don't destroy it, it becomes an AoE. For Harmony of the 5 elements, pick up all 4 element orbs and match them to their pillars. Do this 3 times. Getting hit drops the orb. Players without an orb can stand on a pillar to reveal what it is. Whispers of Starlight is the last main pattern for Phase 1 Moon. As a party, you need to use the AoEs to build a bridge between the constellation and the sphere in the center of the room. If the orb is up top, build a bridge down. If the orb is down below, build a bridge up. Whoever doesn't have the last AoE can move to grab the constellation. If you are uncertain, just stay with the group, someone else should be able to grab it. Make sure to overlap the AoEs and move quickly when grabbing the constellation. The bridge won't last forever. Halo's End is a Phase 2 normal attack. Stack the spirals, wait for them to lock in, then get out. Gaze of the Subconscious is normally very tricky, but can be almost completely ignored. Everyone in the party needs to run to the edge of the screen and do nothing. When the pattern is ending, the 3 players who are not grabbed can run to the holes in the middle of the room and clear the pattern. If the grabbed player is X-stringed to face away from Moo, they may also be able to survive. Song of Virtue is next up. Players must gather the diamonds and touch Moo with them. Watch out, one player will have a laser attack tethered to them. The laser will kill players and destroy the diamonds. Whoever is tethered needs to face the attack away from the party and the diamonds. You can pass the tether, so be careful when walking past Moo. When you succeed, make sure to hide behind the player that's trapped, or you'll be lasered to death anyways. Scattered Memories is another normal attack. Attack Moo and her clone to shrink her attack. These are more dodge the AoE attacks. The chain will close in before exploding. Run out of the middle of the circle after the chain explodes. Memory Seal's the next pattern. You need to move to the colored box. The first 2 targets are blue and are shared by the party, while the last target is yellow and is individual. Hitting a box's edge moves you to the next box in that direction. So go left to go to the next box to the left, go up to go to the next box up, and etc. The number by your head is how many moves you have. Hit a wall when you are out of moves to reset back to the start. If you move quick, you can get multiple attempts to get where you're going. Collapse of Dreams is another normal attack. Hit the clones and walk out of the AoE. And the last pattern we'll be looking at is Engraving of Dreams. Moo has a number above her head. The number by your head needs to match Moo's number when her cast bar is full. Standing in white rings increases your number by the number of rings. Standing in black rings decreases your number by the number of rings. I'm not certain there's a specific strategy to this pattern, but at least now you know what you need to do. With all of that said, if you're clearing weather patterns consistently and syncing your Terminus kills, you can defeat Moo mostly off of the joint damage phases alone. At worst, the party fighting Moo just needs to hang in there and not burn through all the tokens. I want to give a big thank you to all the folks I've been raiding with these past few weeks, the folks in my static, the folks in the statics I'm in, and all of the drifters wandering in to get this week's clear. It's a team effort, and at times a tough raid. Learning all the fights is tough, and it's a group effort. So thank you, and see you all at raid.